Hello and welcome to another edition of Low-Code Campfire. This is episode number 207 for August 15, 2025. It is an open lines Friday. I'm almost prepared for it. I am Dale Warner, head of support for Plantinapp, and I'm glad you've joined us. This is an event that we do every week. It's open to everyone, all skill levels, but we get together and talk about Plantinapp and the experiences that we're having with it and the projects that you're developing, and maybe get some feedback and some assistance from you and for you. Put it up on YouTube so that you can play it back at any time. We do this agenda. We say hello because we're a friendly group, and then we'll start around. We always do first call, anything that you want to talk about. I tend to have a few things that I want to talk about, so I'll add those in as well, but anything you've submitted in advance, things like that. After an hour or so, we'll go to our Afterglow segment where we can turn off the recording and enjoy each other's company for a few more minutes. So do engage with us, jump in, show and tell. You can submit questions and topics in advance. You can either do it by way of this QR code, or you can send an email to support@plantinapp.com. We'll do a little investigation and try to have it ready to talk about in the meeting. With that, hello, everyone.
Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Welcome, one and all. So I'm in my undisclosed location on the coast, and just finished up my vacation. So if my head is almost in this, that's why. So what did anybody come with something that you want to talk about?
A couple of general questions that I would like to discuss.
Please do.
So I have a new app where the first time I'm really going to worry about how it looks on mobile. And my initial attempts were kind of surprising how forms didn't play well on the mobile. And I just wondered, using the Plantinapp skin, if there's sort of certain guidelines when you're laying out a form to work on a phone that to keep things in line. What I'm seeing is things that I'm expecting to be on one row are wrapping around and being on multiple rows on a phone. And I just didn't know if there were certain guidelines that I should be looking for. I was looking through the documentation, but couldn't find them.
So first of all, anybody with experience on this area and want to talk?
So, are you talking about that like fields that when you design it, they're next to each other on a row, but then when you look at it on mobile, they stack? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah, that's expected behavior. That's the responsiveness of the 12 column layout that you're seeing. Because when you're on mobile, it would everything would get so small that that it wouldn't be usable, I think, is the idea there.
Okay. And is there, I mean, these are small fields, so they would fit on the same, like they're small buttons or something, they would fit on the same row. Is there a way to sort of control that?
Maybe. I can't think of anything offhand, but
So the responsiveness is going to be controlled by the CSS. Let's see if I can make a quick demonstration of it. Just to be, from a development standpoint, if you're doing it on, you're of course doing it on a desktop, and then you're going to turn around and open it up on a mobile device. If you narrow out the desktop version, you're going to see the same responsiveness. Let me see if I can get this open here. So you can kind of simulate what it's going to look like. Let's see.
So and in my particular form, I had like 3 buttons next to each other, and and I had them small in the layout screen, but they still stacked. It's like, oh, okay.
Well, we'll try and do something very similar. So from a layout standpoint, these all stacked by default. We're going to make them narrow and side by side. See what that looks like. So if we start narrowing this down, and this isn't perfect because but yeah, you see the behavior where it stacks. This isn't perfect because I have the persona bar here, which takes up some of the screen real estate. You may want to create a non-administrative user to test the view with on desktop if you want to do that. But the as you get to a phone level, it stacks. And so I would agree. It looks like you probably could get more, and so it's might be switching earlier than you'd like, but it's CSS, right? So
The thing that we
Right.
have to remember though is that the button size does not dictate the column size that it's in. And it's the columns that is dictating when it rolls to the next row.
Mhm.
So, you have to realize that a grid is split up into 12 columns, evenly spaced. So even though you can see how this is 2 of 12, 2 of 12. So it's two pieces of those 12 items. So even if your button is smaller, so to speak, than what the column size is, it doesn't matter. It's the column size that's going to dictate when it rolls.
Hey Dale, throw those 3 buttons into a button group and see what that looks like.
Right. That's where I was going to.
that's, I haven't done it. There we go. We add a button group, and
On the bottom, add 3.
so now we probably have to put so the button group is, from a layout perspective, taking up the whole width. Looks like you might be able to get there, depending on the number of buttons. Just curious. Pull out my handy cell phone here. And interesting, it wouldn't load for me. Did anybody get it to load?
I was too slow to get it up there with you. I can try again. You can do the QR code. Thanks. It's loading and the buttons are side by side, centered nicely on the screen.
Ditto for me.
Nice. So that works with buttons. If you had fields that you were laying out that didn't have space, you're probably still going to stack, right? I don't think there's an equivalent for button group.
The question is, does the button group also stack when it is necessary? Does it, follow the guidelines for mobile responsive?
I think it does. You might have to squeeze more buttons in there than 3 to test that. If I remember right, it doesn't always look great when there's more buttons than fit. As a matter of fact, there's a feature request to put other type of fields into a group like the button group. But given the fact that the forms module is being worked on, it's probably not going to happen. At least not in this version.
So there's your answer. It will start to restack them if it gets above what it can display.
It's pretty good.
Mhm.
Solves what I need.
Okay, good. As we look at button group, trying to see if there's what the settings are here. We have center and left, right, center. So if you do a left align, you get a different alignment, but same. Okay, well, glad it solves what you need. Yeah, interesting. Very good. All right, what else? You said a couple of issues.
Well, the other one that I had was in trying to play with that first one, I tried doing things with static fields or static text fields and stuff. And is there is no label that comes up for a static text field by default. Is there a way to turn one on so it?
I don't believe so. Static, that's just the behavior of static text fields. So you would have to add your own. There is no. There is no label for that.
That would be nice sometimes, but not all the time.
I think that's the whole point and beauty behind the static text is if you
Mhm.
want a label, then put one in there manually for when you need it. Because I would hazard to guess that 99.9% of the time, you're not going to need a label because it's supposed to be some free form HTML you're putting in there.
I often use the static text as a label.
Yep, I do that too.
But I can understand that when you're trying to align a static text with several other fields in a row, then things don't line up correctly because the space for the static, for the label is still there.
Yeah, you have the same issue with buttons.
Sure do.
Yep.
I'm always pushing buttons down because I usually put the label above my field.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So the button always is above the control that's next to it. So I always have to push my buttons down manually so that it lines up with the control.
And when you say manually, you're using something like this and doing
Yes.
a margin top or
Yep.
a.
Yep. Exactly.
Top.
I usually, what is it, like margin top? I think it's usually for me like 42 pixels or something like that.
And I would have said 29, but yeah, somewhere in there.
33.
We all have our favorites.
Mhm.
All right.
So that's also
it
a
all
feature
depends on the
request.
skin.
That's out there. There ought to be a checkbox for that.
That would be nice for the buttons at least to
Yeah.
pretend there's a label.
Um, So I think, I mentioned it last week that I got my first preview of the Forms 2.0. It's all about being able to position things. So you can have not only place things horizontally, but you can put a container and then put things within the container. So you can have a right side container, for example, that goes vertically, and a left side that's stacked across that horizontally, and so gives you a lot more flexibility about where to put things. And so that seems to be the emphasis. It'll be interesting to see whether things like labels and button positioning, if any of that is improved with that.
That sounded good.
There was something, I happened to use a button group for something here recently, and I learned something, which was, so we have this design and we refresh it and we see the positioning. All the buttons are in the within the button group. If you change any of the names of the buttons, change the IDs of the buttons, which I was just kind of accidentally, I was changing the title of it and it changed the ID. I didn't care what the ID of the button was, but interestingly, it pushes it out of the button group. And so you have to so now this is appearing in its own outside of the button group. And so with the button group, you have to go back in and add that back in. It doesn't keep up with that change for you automatically. Not a huge deal, but worth a mention.
Since we're talking about aspects of these buttons, I wonder, Dale, do you know, and you could test it right here, if you were to put this form into a pop-up form, do the 5 buttons still take up vertical space on the pop-up form? And I'm thinking that they do. So it makes your pop-up form taller than it would ordinarily be if the buttons were not there. And my way of handling it is I just put them all in one row, even though they're not being governed by that. It just limits the space.
I see. So it took me a second to figure out. So we on my layout, we have all these buttons. Some of them are, so these submit 4 and 5 are down below, and you're saying if this was a pop-up, it might expand.
Yeah.
Vertically.
You'll wind up in this current scenario, you'd have a little bit extra blank space underneath your row of buttons in a pop-up because of this.
Versus your versus positioning just to.
Yeah. So we're taking a hit on one row of a blank space, but it's only one instead of who knows how much. I usually have a lot of things that are hidden.
Mm-hmm. Good point. All right. We good here? Any more on this area?
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Any other first call kind of topic? Let's see what else we can get into. Little peek behind the scenes at our Kanban board. Since last week, we have these things that are done. Calendar view localization is done and released. I think I mentioned this last week, not sure, but there was some incompatibility with when you're trying to create a list from Excel action, we were not correctly reading some sheet names if you had a sheet name, and also the action that retrieves the sheet names from a file, which would be useful. You can say you can retrieve which sheet names and then say which sheet do you want to load data from. Some sheet names that were supported by Excel, particularly those with an apostrophe, there might have been other characters, weren't correctly loading, and now they do. So this was dealing with a particular client that was getting spreadsheets in with odd characters that he couldn't control what the sheet names were. So we wanted to make sure. So we updated the underlying create list from Excel library, the Excel reader. So that's done. Over the last couple of weeks, I think we talked about that NavXP. I think Patrick was here the last time we talked about this because he showed us that where it should be going. So now NavXP modules can be accessed. That one is done. When I say things are done, I'm not 100% sure yet that they are available as hotfixes. That's a separate process, but at least when I say done, the development team has done all the work, and everyone has signed off on that it's good. So then our final step is we have to make sure that there isn't anything that's in a state of half completion or not fully done. A release should include everything everything that's in it should be in this done state. So sometimes we can release it right away, sometimes not. These all, I have no idea whether they're released in hotfixes. I think calendar view is. I'm not sure about all of these. Other than that, we in these two down at the bottom. So we have, these are in our kind of final stages, QA and user acceptance testing. So the field tooltip, I think I had used this very early in my DNN Sharp / Plantinapp career before I was an employee, and then I forgot that this was even in here. There's so much in this product. But this field tooltop, the icon is ready to go. We were having a client that reported that inline add action was failing with an error, which is fixed. Code review is, we think we've got it done, but it has to pass our development leadership approval that it's good code. So this is the one where if you've got a space in a token name, that invisible space will create a token that has a space on it, which should not be. So we've talked about that one before. You got to be careful about it now in the new user interface, but we're working on it. And some other things. I know this one is reported by Patrick, the ability to have a divider between the countries in a phone field, and making sure that the token editor doesn't, this is somebody else, but token editor doesn't, if you have two tokens open and you save on one, that it doesn't lose changes that you've got going on in the other. So all these are in progress. Any questions, anything near and dear to your heart that I could answer? In any case, progress. I love it.
Definitely.
Thought it'd be worth taking a look at calendar localization, because that's been a long time coming. And this got completed while I was away, and so I was very pleased to see the simplicity of the low code. So here's a calendar that was set up, and so if I were, and it's being viewed in US English, if I switch it to French, which this one hasn't been configured yet, so it's not going to do anything different. But the old behavior was, if you viewed this from a browser that was in a French locale, you would still see English. We didn't have any choices but English. So the configuration of this, it's just a switch in the view settings. So if you open up the listing and go to views and open up the calendar view, there's this one checkbox, enable localization. So if you don't check it, you get English titles, and this is going to be the default behavior. So anyone who's doing installing this update. The behavior won't change, but as soon as you click enable localization and then refresh, we're at the, I chose the French as spoken in France. We now get different month names, and all the titles have changed and all the days have changed. And if we start
Cool.
looking at other days and we go to the Netherlands localization, we'll get yet another. So a very simple one click and you can have localizations. So for our international folks, I'm sure that'll be a nice one. Questions on that one? I did this demonstration on my local site. One of these days I will, I consider putting it on Campfire. It's not that really that much to demonstrate, but the thing is we don't have more than one language enabled in that site, and so I didn't know what else I'd break if I start turning on other languages. So I left it alone.
Merci beaucoup.
Absolutely. I was away all week. I did not do a documentation update. There was nothing new, but we keep trying to work that one forward. Last time we talked about Textbox with the autocomplete URL. And so this is now I think we spent quite a bit of time on it, making it work and investigating some shortcomings of it, but at least now it's here as a contribution, and I have a to-do item to provide some additional text on this. But the idea is that as you start, this is a standard text box that's configured with a autocomplete URL, and the autocomplete URL goes out and very efficiently queries your API. I've got the API linked here so you can go and take a look at it. So how to configure it, it needs a input parameter called query. There's maybe other ways to configure it as well, but this is the easiest. And then this is just as simple as it can be. We create a list from SQL using the query. So we're passing in the query into the SQL query. And so this returns only the things that have where the display name is like whatever is being typed. So as you're typing into this field, let's see if I can find, first of all, let's dock it on the bottom, look at the network tab, looking at these fetch X HRs. So you can see a query goes out for whatever was typed, and the payload comes back with the things that qualify. So it can be very efficient versus trying other ways where you load all the values. For example, if you do a SQL, a drop down with a SQL query, it'll load all the values and send them via the browser. If there's lots and lots of choices, that's inefficient. So it's out here. You can take a look at it. I'll add some text to it here in the days to come. Questions on text box with autocomplete? Cool. Community forum. First of all, there were a couple of questions. I thank everyone who participates for helping, especially while I'm away. But helping your fellow Plantinapp community members is very useful. So there was one that was that came up. Somebody was asking about an error message that came up. A lot of time, and Yeah, so maybe it's worth taking a look at this. I'm not sure where this one's going to go yet, but they're saying they're clicking a button to open a pop-up. Pop-up form doesn't open, and this is something that they're seeing in the log. When you see this, first of all, a DI container, we see these errors reasonably frequently, and it's in a dependency and an injection. I know what the words are, but I don't have too much of a clue what that means. So we leave that one to the developers, but we see this quite a bit. But the inner stack trace, even I can read a little bit. Reading from the bottom up, you see where different DLLs within the system were called. And it's interesting, this one that starts out, the .NET Nuke ones, these are from the underlying platform, DNN. And then, and so when we see these, .NET Nuke and System Web and all of these, and ASP Fast Object Factory, this is a little bit, I don't quite know what that is. But then it finally gets to one of our modules. Our modules either begin with DNN Sharp or Plantinapp, typically. And so this looks to me like a skin problem, something with the theme that, and I asked that we're going to need some more details to sort this one out, but looks like it's DNN is just having trouble loading that theme, and I don't quite know why. Could be, I'm just taking a wild guess, Fast Object Factory and ASP Portals. This looks like some particular configuration that might not be working right. That's just a wild guess. A hand is up, Ben.
Hey, I see this particular error a lot. In a lot of cases, from the past, I can't speak if the newer versions, which I haven't yet been able to upgrade to, have addressed that or not. But I do know that in the scheduler, if I attempted inside of an execute asynchronous to reference a token I created before I got into the asynchronous command, this would litter my error log. I couldn't reference items easily, or rather, sorry, not if it wasn't, how do I put this? If I created a token and put a value in before getting into the asynchronous, it worked with regards to other tokens. So, for example, if I had a token called general.getCurrentSchoolYear, if I used that token inside the asynchronous, it would fail. But if before I got into the asynchronous, I called it and put it into another token and just called it current school year and referenced current school year inside the asynchronous block, it works.
So what I'm hearing is that you're seeing an issue with calling custom tokens as compared to something that's in context.
Correct. That was the error I was seeing. Like I said, I don't know if that's been addressed yet because I think I'm still running on 1.2.6, I think. So I don't know if a future patch or anything has addressed that, but I know that was something that I was seeing very, very often. I've gotten to the point where it's habit now that if I call any custom token inside an asynchronous, I just do it before I get there and I dump it into another variable. But when I did do that, that's when I was getting a lot of these scoped DI container errors.
Interesting. So you mentioned as an automation versus any other way to call it.
I was seeing it in automation, because in my particular case, that's where I was doing that.
So here we have a test token, the AA1 token. So let's it just does it's just a constant token, but at least it's a it'll illustrate the issue. So if we go to an automation, then we'll create a new job. And so we'll add an action that is execute actions asynchronously. We'll add an action that is a create update token that is that. And then we'll do a close that and add an action to, let's see what we've got. So we'll do a context JSON object called tokens. We'll include everything. We're going to send it to tokens as a token name, and then we will add an action to log event. This is going to be an admin alert. Add we'll do another one. I always like to put some kind of evidence of where I came from, because the stuff will start showing up in the log and I don't know how to turn it off again. So, and then we might as well test everything all at once here. If I add another action, create update tokens, and then this is a from outside. Nope. So this is the way that you're succeeding at it, as I understand it, Ben. You're creating a token that exists before you start async actions. So this should get passed into the context, whatever the result of that.
Correct.
And then I'm also doing it inside, and we'll see if it works. All right, so save and close. See if we can find that one. I wish our UI allowed search by name, so we'll run it. 207. And then we can look at the logs. From outside worked and from inside worked. So first of all, I'm on version 127.390. This is all public hotfixes installed So maybe it could be a version thing. It also could be that when jobs run, sometimes there's this, in what context are they running? Whether or not they're a user context and whether that impacts the creation of the token. So
Actually, you just reminded me, yes, because that was the other thing that drove me absolutely insane trying to track this. If you run, like you just did, the automation manually, it runs it as the context of yourself, and it worked. But if it ran off of a trigger, that's when it would fail.
well, let's add a time trigger. I don't want to wait around a long time, so we'll do it every 15 seconds. Save and close. Wait for it to run here. There we go. I'll turn it off so it doesn't fill my log. And look at the logs. Refresh.
All right, looks like it's fixed.
Well, and so, this one again is a context, is a constant token. You could have trouble with different ones, but again, I would just, general caution, whether it's this issue or any others, that it's going to be based when you're doing where to go here. Nope, don't want that. If you don't give it a context, then it doesn't have a user. So some of the tokens wouldn't work, and if you're doing a Plantinapp entity without a user, you probably don't have permission to use some of the actions like read and read all and create. So that can be a problem with automation. Probably not the issue you're seeing. So anyway, feel free to open a ticket if it persists. If you can nail it down to something testable, I'd be happy to try and reproduce it. Anyway, so to this particular one, I think my guess is maybe it's a DNN level that we haven't tested, or a combination that we haven't tested, maybe an update that will solve it. We'll see how that turns out. And I see this other one, filters and tabs not playing well together. And again, thanks for jumping in here. I see that Mark and Brandon both tried to help Lee. But I think this is, first of all, the problem. I'm sorry for scrolling around. Several tabs on, you got one page with listings on them, and the filters for that listing are getting confused with one another. And I think, there was this suggestion about using sync with URL, which is, so the things that you type in search or filter are showing up in the URL, but also you're going to want to make sure they have different prefixes. Each list, if you want the listings to operate independently, providing a URL prefix or a query string prefix, I think it's listed as query string prefix, designates that each listing impact the query string differently, and so it will ignore things from other listings that way. Everyone familiar with those settings? Anybody want to see those settings? All right, take it by your silence. It's not that exciting. That's all I had prepared. So if there's anything else you want to talk about or show off. Anybody have anything interesting that they're working on?
Oh, I'm always working on interesting things. Not that they're shareable or anyone cares.
Yes, yes. There was one that I teased a while back. Let's see if I can find it. This- all right. I don't know if I've put it in Campfire yet or not. I kind of get things half started and didn't finish. So let's make sure that they're not just here ready to look at. Yep, not done yet. All right. So the scenario that I was dealing with was that was an automation that was running very frequently. It might have been every 10 seconds, I think it was. And every time it ran, it was trying to look to see if there was something to do. It was doing that by running a SQL query. And it turns out the SQL query wasn't terribly efficient. So now you got every 10 seconds, it wakes up, runs a query, goes to sleep 24 hours a day. And so, I got one of those emails from the boss saying, can you tell me why you're using up so much CPU on this server? And so when I dug into it, I could see that it was thousands of repetitions of running the SQL query. And so there were two answers. One, to make sure that the query was efficient. That was solved by adding a key in SQL, an index in SQL, because the field, the table I was looking at had 100,000 records. I was looking for a text value, and it was not an indexed field, and so it was having to plow through 100,000 records to come up with the answer of nope, nothing to do. But the other thing was that it was running every 10 seconds and having to run that query. So I tried. All this to say is that I came up with a technique to be able to so that it could the job could start and test something that did not involve SQL, a cached token, to know that there was nothing to do, and so it immediately goes back to sleep. It immediately ends. And so it's kind of like having a job that is running on demand when there's something going on, but goes back to sleep and runs very efficiently. So let's look at automation and see if I can find what I did here. So yeah, running every 10 seconds. And so what I've done is I have this condition. Utility event has been raised, and it's looking for an event named Q email processing active. So if this is true, this token is true, then these things, this is the job that I was previously doing, so it would check to see if there's anything to do, and just it's the exact same job. But when it's so it's all based on this token. If this token comes back false, it immediately goes back to sleep. So it's still running every 10 seconds. It's still creating a history record, which, by the way, entries into the history table, you can see this thing is running every 10 seconds. So it is still doing some SQL. It's still inserting a record into SQL. This was something about history we worked on recently that added more keys to make this be very efficient as well. There was a efficiency issue with this, but that's, as we find these things, we're improving and fixing. Anyway, this is not then supremely efficient. We still get entries into the history log, but it's better than it was. So the underlying tokens that we have, I have a token called event raise. So when something happens that I want, in this case, that I want to turn on email processing, using the event raise token ends up creating a cached token that can be read by the automation and know to go to work. There's this event has been raised token, which is used to test to see if it's there, and then event handled is when I determine that there's nothing more for that automation to do. By lowering the event, it no longer it now will return false, and now basically the job goes back to sleep. So is that pattern interesting enough that somebody wants to see what's behind the scenes, or have a different way of handling that particular problem?
So previously, there's an action in your automation that says anything to process. Is that doing something different than what the token's doing? Is that?
It is doing something different.
Oh, okay, all right.
So let's see if I can find that. The anything to process was running a SQL update. So there's still this anything to process, which is running this.
Oh, I see. Okay.
This token, looking for
okay.
anything new, merge, send. So if there's any, this will return true or false, or no, a count. And but this was the one that was inefficient.
Okay.
But now you can imagine, okay, this is processing emails. The thing that inserts records into Q email knows when it's inserting new things to be processed, and so it is raising this event Q email processing active. It says it does a raise event on this. So
so that token just checks to see, is there any processing active?
Right. If this event has been raised, then it does the rest of the work. Well, this is a cached token, so this event has been raised as a cached token. So if the value is false, then this set of execute actions doesn't run.
Right.
And so it never does the SQL query. It knows that there's nothing there because the new rule then is when things are placed into new, you have to raise the event to get work to be done.
Have you had any problem with the job that marks the token as yes, there's work to be done, and the one that's running to clear it conflicting with each other, so you miss a queue?
No, not in this case, because when let's see, could it happen? Let's think about that. If the one that clears it does a query that says, is there anything more to do? Let's see if it's, I don't know if it's in here. Okay, it's being handled right here. So we're doing, we're doing this. It gets the item count. If there's nothing to do, then this is true. Item count is 0, and it immediately says it's handled everything there is. So if, theoretically, if between the time that this token was run and this token was run, something new got inserted, then yes, you could have have something sitting and the event isn't raised.
But with your item count equals 0, if something got erased, it wouldn't clear the flag until it would run it 10 seconds, the next 10 seconds, and get the 0 and then clear it.
Yes.
Right. So that would be pretty short time. I've had problems where I've done this sort of flagging with using a database table on something running on like a cursor, and started the process, and then things changed while it was running the cursor, and then it marked the record as process that wasn't a flagged field.
And I've had that problem too, trying to make sure you having to manage that concurrent stuff can be a problem. Anyway, I just throw it out here. It's something that's out there. One of these days I'll send it to into Campfire. Also mentioned, depending on your design, there's other ways that this could be handled. For example, the on database trigger. So checking for the change of a field within a and so in this case, whatever I'm counting by status, that there's a status on a queue email table. So you could trigger based on that and do activity there as well. So there are other ways to be efficient. I had a particular design that was already causing me trouble, and so I decided, well, let's tackle event raising. So, all right. With that, we've hit our hour. I want to thank you all for joining, and hopefully it'll be a more normal session next week. I'll be back at my disclosed location and maybe having done a little bit more preparation and having my head in the game. But thanks for being here with us for this one, and we will adjourn momentarily into our afterglow segment. Hang around if you like.